I found out that my entitled neighbor cut down all the trees in my property because they were hazard, so I made him pay $650,000 and he put his house for sale. I'm 28 and bought my first house 3 years ago. It's a 3-acre property with this beautiful line of 12 massive oak trees running along the road. They were probably 80 years old, provided incredible shade in summer, and honestly, they're the reason I fell in love with the place. My neighbor Greg is this retired guy in his late 50s who's lived next door for like 20 years. The day I moved in, he came over with this fake friendly smile and asked what my plans were for the trees. I was confused and said I didn't have any plans. They were perfect. He told me that 2 years before I bought the place, a branch fell off during a storm and blocked part of the road for a few hours. Said the previous owner refused to do anything about it and he hoped I'd be more reasonable. I told him I'd think about it, but honestly, I had no intention of cutting them down. Over the next 3 years, he brought it up maybe 4 or 5 times. Always the same thing about them being dangerous. I always gave him the same answer. No. Last month, I went to Portland for my sister's wedding. Left Friday morning, planned to be back Sunday night. The wedding was beautiful. I had an amazing time. Completely forgot about Greg and his tree obsession. I pulled onto my street Sunday around 9 p.m. and I swear I almost drove past my own house. The entire tree line was just gone, completely leveled. Where there used to be this gorgeous canopy of branches, there was just empty sky and piles of wood chips. I didn't even unpack. I walked straight to Greg's house and pounded on his door. He opened it with this smug look on his face that I'll never forget. Before I could say anything, he said, "I took care of those dangerous trees for you. Got city approval and everything. You're welcome." I was so angry, I was shaking. I told him to stay the hell off my property and left before I said something I'd regret. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept looking out my window at where the trees used to be. My entire yard looked naked and wrong. Monday morning at 8 a.m., I called the city's public works department, gave them my address, and asked about the permit. The woman put me on hold for maybe 5 minutes. When she came back, she said there was nothing in their system. No permits, no applications, no records of any kind for my address in the past 6 months. I asked her to check again. She did. Still nothing. I called 3 different tree removal companies that afternoon. The second one I tried confirmed they did the work. Said they were following a city order that Greg had given them. When I told them the city had no record of any permit, the guy on the phone got really quiet and said I should talk to his manager. That's when I knew Greg had forged the documents. I hired a lawyer that same day. His name was Robert. Been practicing for 30 years. And the second I mentioned the trees were white oaks, his entire demeanor changed. He told me to get an arborist out to my property immediately and not to speak to Greg under any circumstances. The arborist came out Wednesday morning. Professional woman, probably mid-40s, who'd been doing this for 20 years. She walked my property for 2 hours taking measurements and photos. When she sat down to give me her assessment, she looked almost apologetic. These were mature white oaks, probably 75 to 85 years old. Replacing them with trees of comparable size and ensuring they survived the transplant process, she handed me a printed estimate. We're looking at roughly $650,000 for all 12 trees. I just stared at the number. $650,000. I called Robert immediately. His exact words were, "This just became very expensive for your neighbor." We filed the lawsuit the following week. I also had my property appraised. Turns out losing those trees dropped my property value by almost $95,000. Greg's lawyer reached out 6 days after we filed, wanted to settle immediately. Apparently Greg comes from old money, owns 3 properties, but absolutely did not want this case going public or ending up in front of a judge. The settlement negotiations took 2 weeks. I can't share all the details, but I'm getting every single tree back. Professional installation by the top arborist company in the state. Guaranteed survival rate. Complete restoration of my property line. All at Greg's expense. The contract was signed last Friday. This morning I was having coffee and I saw the for sale sign go up in Greg's yard. His house has been in his family for 2 decades and now he's leaving. He hasn't looked me in the eye once since the settlement.